We're supposed to have David on now. Is David ready? Okay, so please make welcome David Akinyemi, who is a psychologist in training and has a lot of insight for us today. Welcome, David. Is he on?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Dave. Good morning. Please unmask your face.
Okay. Uh, uh, I don't know. Can you say it?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay.
Good
So
morning.
I might turn this off a little bit later.
No
if that's fine.
problem.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing, Susan. Like that was that was really good to thank you for sharing, and quite grateful for Pastor saying some thoughts on the topic, and I'm glad to see that you're doing a lot better, and super grateful to everyone who put this together. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Dra. Thank you to the team. It's a privilege, huge privilege to be here. Such a massive number of persons. So I think a lot has been said already, and I really think that what's very important is the conversations that we are going to be having. Um, I guess in a couple of minutes from now, where we can answer questions that you've asked, and other questions that the team has put together. But just before we do that, I I was going to talk about humanizing people with mental health illnesses. Sorry, and I think it's very important to clarify that I was telling Idra some days ago. I guess she asked me, why do people go crazy? And it's like people are curious about why people go crazy. And I told her that it's not necessarily that people are crazy, it's just that they are not neurotypical. So, because, and I say that being very conscious of the cultural movement around being neurotypical and being neurodivergent, which has a downfalls, right? People, there's a movement that calls themselves neurodivergent people, and the cultural definition for that movement is to kind of project your strength and to be very silent and to put less focus on your weaknesses. Like you're just different. And I think there's a lot of good in that, but I also think that it has its disadvantages. But I'm using the term literally, right? The fact that some people's brains aren't wired the way some other person's kind of brains are wired. And it's not necessarily mental illness. It's just that they are different, and that can be true also. And you know, if someone were to ask you, for instance, everyone on the call, like, how are you doing? And people's most response, like immediate response is, I'm fine and I'm okay. And for me, who has had to struggle with a very rare disease for a while, I I used to find it very difficult to answer that question when people say, how are you? Because I find dishonesty very, very annoying. So I feel like when I say I'm fine, then I'm being dishonest. And so it becomes a very tough question to answer. And, you know, we have, if you live in Nigeria, my wife came to me some weeks ago with a problem. She told me about a lady who was having some, they had just delivered a baby and they were going through a depressive episode. I'm trying to remember the clinical term, postpartum. I don't remember right now. And they couldn't get back to work. They had delivered for a while, and so she was telling me what are they going to do? Like she needs to talk to her about how she's going to get back to working. Oh, thank you so much, Adere Solatas. Thank you for reminding me. So, how are they going to get back to work? How are they going to but sorry, they lost their baby. Jesus, why am I missing it up? So they lost their baby, they had a miscarriage, and then they began to have a tough time after. And I told my wife that, I don't know the person personally, and it's very difficult for me to give very outlandish, very, very straight answers when I don't know the context the person is coming from. And the reason why I'm saying this is because if you're in the United States, you're in Australia, you're in Canada, or you're in Nigeria, you're in Europe, you know, the kind of stressors that you have, and when I say stressors, the kind of things that make you not fine, the kind of things that stresses you as a in quotes normal person is very much dependent on the environment that you find yourself. And so people develop coping mechanisms to undo whatever is stressing them. For many of us in Nigeria, that's Nigeria itself. I put something on my status the other day about Nigeria's national anthem should be changed to this popular song that says, "What is it? Have you done enough? The pain, the torment, and what have you?" So I feel like Nigeria itself is, is a stressor, a stress issue, and then you have other things that stresses people. You have finances, academics, relationships, and so people develop coping mechanisms for that. I've heard about people who turn to substance abuse. I've had people who turn to fixation. They kind of fixate on one thing, and it's very, very difficult to get their focus off that thing. Because they're trying to cope with life. And sometimes this leads to very serious problems. Susan said something the other time that I think is very important. I think as a society, we need to do a lot of work when it comes to awareness. I come from a very conservative circle, possibly like many of us. I believe there are many Christians here. And in our circle, there's a lot of hush culture, like keeping quiet, shame, honor around in our culture. And that can make it very difficult for people who need to find help. I wrote on my Facebook a year ago that when people say you're just being emotional, and that trope has become so common, you're just being emotional and just being emotional, and people begin to, it seems like emotions are not relevant or they are not important or they are bad. But really, the emotions are just, you have your intellect, you have your emotions. Emotions are part of what make you human. And so when anyone, talks down on your emotion, when anyone makes you feel bad for having emotions, when anyone invalidates your emotion, and there's a caveat there, there are signs we display emotions and they are actually not valid. That's fine. But the presence of the emotion itself, it's just like the way you have your intellect, right? And sometimes you use your intellect wrongly. Everybody does that. I use my intellect wrongly sometimes. A lot of us use our intellect wrongly sometimes, but people don't get as demonized as they get when people use their emotions wrongly. So it's fine to have emotions. And when we continue to tell people, don't be emotional, you are being too emotional, we actually dehumanizing them. We are taking something away from them that makes them only human. And so we need to be really careful about doing that. People are allowed to be angry. People are allowed to be sad. People are allowed to have emotions. They are allowed to go through a range of emotions, and we have a responsibility and a duty of care to those we call friends, to those we call family. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. The fact that if you're going to take something away from this call, take away the fact that it's not wrong to be emotional. It's absolutely not wrong. I've put in the caveat that emotions can be used wrongly. That's fine. But nobody should ever get you into a space where you are actively trying to hold yourself off from showing emotions or from displaying emotions as wrong. And then the second thing I want to talk about is depression, which I think more persons. Susan shared a story about schizophrenia, which is a type of disorder. And then you have, DSM-5 as a list of disorders that are available right now. But I know, like, very common in our society, in our culture, is depression and anxiety. I have anxiety. I have anxiety about this call. So, there are two types. There is situational anxiety and there's clinical depression. Situational depression, clinical depression. Situational depression is often a response to trauma. Something happens, you lose a parent, you you go into debt, you something seriously happens, and then you're depressed because of that. And sometimes it resolves itself after about 3 months or more. And then you have clinical depression, which and this is very simplistic. We do not have the time for me to go like very in depth into all of this. And then you have clinical depression, which is basically something is biologically wrong with your brain, in quotes. So I like to say that as gentle as possible. Basically, we have neurotransmitters in our brain, and they send messages. You have neurotransmitters like dopamine. Many of us, I think, dopamine is very popular, right? Is there anyone who knows about dopamine? Dopamine is I think that one is very, very, very popular. And then you have quite a lot of them. So neurotransmitters are very essential parts of our, you have serotonin, for instance, which communicates to our brain, affect our mood, our appetite, our sleep. Dopamine affects, our feelings of pleasure, reward, motivation. You have GABA, which is calmness, calmness, relaxation, anxiety, and all that. You have a lot of them. And when there's a problem with your neurotransmitters, you can, you can have depression. You can have clinical anxiety. And in that case, you need to be on medications, you need to be on antidepressants so that you can get better. It's the same thing as you eating your leg on something. It's the same thing like as you having a physical illness, like maybe long-term diabetes, or I don't know what have you. Same thing as you having a long hypertension, what have you. Like something went wrong with your body somewhere, whether because of genetic predispositions, whether your parents had it, your forefathers had it, something like that, or sometimes situational depression also leads to clinical depression. But I think it's very important to make that, to create that difference. And I'm saying this because there are many of us who have clinical depression and we don't know. And, sometimes it looks like talking to our friends, talking to our religious heads, our pastors, aren't working, or wherever the religious circle you belong to. And most likely, the kind of treatment you need is a combination of medications and therapy. Whereas for situational depression, having someone to talk to, a licensed person who understands how to create the proper environment, um, can be helpful. So that's to the fact that they are chemical depression. I believe that Pastor was also saying something about the power of God earlier, and as a Christian, I really believe that the same way somebody could probably lay hands on you because you have a leg pain, you can't walk. I also very strongly believe that somebody can communicate the power of God to you, and that can heal that disorder in your brain. I think that can happen. I'm aware that many times that it doesn't happen, but I also know that it can happen. I think that's important to put in mind. So that's two. And then three, community is very important. And before I go into all of that, Nigeria, we we have very we have what they call traditional Eastern culture. It's a shame and honor culture and a reward culture where you do something for the sake of your tribe, for your family, to earn the favor of your family. And there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of hush in our culture. And that culture from the Middle East down to Africa prioritizes community over self. And on the surface, that's good. And then you have the Western modern culture, which is very individualistic, which prioritizes self over community. And then you have Nigeria, which has become like a potpourri of both cultures. As our parents grew up, gave birth to us, my generation, I don't know which one I belong to, I heard Gen Z, I don't know. Then the ones coming up and the ones after. We have like a mixture of the traditional Eastern culture and a mixture and with the modern Western individual culture. And that's very problematic because in the West, it's easy for psychologists and easy for counselors, whether they are pastors, imams, what have you. It's easy for anybody who is licensed to help people to identify things in that individualistic culture that can be responsible for the feelings that people are having and then prescribe a solution to that. It's also very easy for people in the other one, the Eastern traditional culture, to identify what problems a member of that culture is facing and prescribe a solution to it. But then you have us, which have a mix of both. And we have a bigger problem where what we have is not very clearly defined. So you have a child who is very exposed via social media to modern individual culture. But when they're at home, when they're in church, the culture there is a very Eastern community-based culture. And so the child, the person, and this applies to me, and I'm very sure many of us young people, is caught in a loop. Because when we're a very simplistic definition of culture is a way of life, you know, culture tells us how to live, you know, and there's a place here for how Christianity offers a counterculture and all that, but that's not the point of this talk. So, but then you now have two conflicting ideologies about how to live life, and that in itself can confuse the operations of your brain. It can confuse how you process your emotions. And I don't claim to have a solution to it. It is my hope and wish that people in my field would, and a lot more persons would do um, writings and podcasts and what have you, helping us to make sense of things in our culture so that people can be able to identify their problems and be able to find a solution to it. If you look at the Greco-Roman era, you have people like Aristotle, Plato, and the likes, always writing missives about their culture. And then you have Apostle Paul. If you look at the book of John, for instance, in the Bible, and when it says that, in John chapter 1, the Gospels, you have those when he was talking about the Logos, you know, it was a philosophical statement that philosophers of his time had to deal with, because it was basically saying that the how behind the world that we live in, is a person. And that was just weird to everybody. Like, what do you mean? Like, the logic behind life is a person. So, and then you have Apostle Paul with the books to the Romans, to the Ephesians, to the Corinthians, basically critiquing their culture. And that's really very lacking here. And so it's my hope that there's a solution to that, so that can, help us to identify this loop and confusion that many of us have inadvertently and unintentionally found ourselves in, and find the solution to it. And then finally, there are lots of struggling people around you. You're probably struggling as well. I have my personal struggles, and I know that, you know many of us wants to put up a front that we're fine, but you know in there that you're not, that you're not fine and you're not doing well. So I mean, you put up a front, you try to act fine, you talk to your friends, they give you counsel. Keep doing that. Keep keep talking to the people that love you. Keep keep holding on to the community that you find yourself. We keep carrying on. Don't let life win. Don't let it win. Don't let the competing circumstances that try to deal with your brain, you know, don't let them win. There's a poem. Oh my god, can you hear me? I feel like am I?
We can hear you, David. Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry. So here I thought my network went off. It says, "Do not go gentle into that old night. Rage against the dying of the light. Whatever is trying to put off your light, put off your happiness, put off your joy, don't allow it. Rage, rage against it. And raging doesn't have to be fiery. It can. It doesn't have to be fiery. It can be fiery, but it doesn't have to always be fiery. It can simply be an obsession with moving forward. And sometimes that is slow steps. Sometimes that is a display of quiet strength. Sometimes that is also a very passionate, fiery pushback. Whatever way you want to do it, keep pushing back. Keep holding on to community. Keep talking to the people that love you. Don't lose it. Don't lose it. I when I when I went to Lagos a couple of months ago, and I ran some medical tests, and I did not like the results. And I had a very I came back to Ibadan, and my God, I was down. Everything was cloudy. I basically shut up everyone in my life. I had very suicidal thoughts. I wanted to jump down. I stay in an upstairs, and I wanted to jump down from yeah. And this was just this year, and I've pastored people on and off for about 10 years. So, and I still have those feelings, right? And I mean, I basically just wanted to jump off, and I had to stave off that feeling. Like, it was very competing. Um, I'm very scared of painful death. If not, I would have taken something. So the reason why I didn't jump off wasn't actually because of any other thing, than because it was going to be a painful death. So I tried to get medications that could make the job very fast. I had a very serious, severe suicidal episode. Then, because the news I had gotten when I went for my medical tests were very bad, and you know, all of that basically became better because I went to church one day, and as I got into service, the worship team began to sing a song, "Good Plans" by Red Rocks Worship, and I just broke down in tears, and that started a journey of healing for me. That God's plan for me is always good, even when I don't feel like it, even when it doesn't look like it. And that's helpful. So I found help in community. So please, if you need to, I know it's very hard to get treatment in Nigeria, but do the research. I think people like Susan, Vicky, Adria, they could probably help. I seek help. If you need to talk to a licensed therapist, if you need to talk to somebody who can prescribe you medications in a controlled manner, please do. It's very important. Don't, if you eat your leg on something, if you eat your toe on a wood and it didn't bruise, there's no blood, and it's pain, that kind of bad pain, that kind of niggling pain when you have muscle pain, you won't ignore it, right? treat your treat your mind like that. When your mind consistently is showing you that it isn't okay, the same way you would go to a doctor if you had that pain in your toe. Hi Joseph, sorry, you're okay, sorry, thank you. So the same way you go to a doctor with that pain in your toe, is the same way you should go seek out a doctor. And I know, like I know maybe better than most people how horrible our medical system is, but that's what we have, right? As bad as it is. So, like Susan said, some of these medications, most medications for that psychologists prescribe would help different kind of disorders, not just one. So seek help if you have consistent, you have these symptoms. Seek help. Don't sit down and not do anything. Don't sit down and not do anything. Seek help. It's very important. And if it's not that persistent, if you've not had very long term issues with your feelings, with your emotions, need to attack other people, suicidal thoughts, and what have you. If it's more of a response to trauma, talk to your pastor. If you're a Christian, talk to your faith leaders, and if possible, get to therapy to let people talk to you. There's nothing shameful about getting help. Absolutely nothing shameful about getting help. And then I'm going to round up with this. Because I really am looking forward to the Q&A session. I think that's really important. The way you grow and you have wrinkles on your face, the way people grow is that their body hardens up. Older people have wrinkles. You guys understand what I'm talking about? Like as you grow older, your face becomes set. Your bones, like your body hardens, right? It sets. I just need some responses. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like the way physically, like your body sets. Yeah, that's what happens when people grow older. So I want you to put it in mind that your mind, you know, just as your physical body, as you grow, you start having back pain, your body is setting. You can't, maybe if you are short now, you're short forever. Your and stuff like that. And then you have your leg is bent somehow, is bent like that. Nothing can happen to it. Patterns of behavior and your mind is also growing like that. As you grow, that it also becomes more difficult to change patterns. So it's not just your body that is setting, that is becoming hard. Your soul is also becoming hard. So becoming hard. Your patterns of behavior are becoming very more difficult to change as you grow older. And it's very, very necessary that you are, like I keep telling people, as I'm looking at my phone right now, I can't see what's happening at my back. I can't see what's happening outside my house, right? None of us have a 360-degree vision field. We don't have eyes everywhere. Our vision is not complete. And that's the same thing for our mind. We don't always see it all. There's somebody out there who is saying it. And you need to be very conscious of asking, what are they saying? And how can you learn it from them? You need to be very humble in your approach to, your patterns of behavior, the way you behave, the way you interact with the world around you. You need to be very conscious about it because I need to be very interested in seeing there's a game I play with myself where if I do something, if I behave in a particular way, um I often ask myself, how does this end up? What's the fruit of this thing? How does this end up? And I am very willing to see the downside and the upside of my behavior. And I think that's very necessary. And if you're very open to seeing upsides and downsides, it makes it easy for you to progress. So we're very interested in making sure that patterns of behaviors that you don't want do not become set and that you know, you can find help to fixing them, as soon as possible. So sorry if I've taken so much of your time, but I really just wanted to share my thoughts on this topic. I I hope that this helps somebody. I there's one thing I was talking to them yesterday. I like to listen to people. I've listened to people all my life. Possibly I've listened to people too much. But there's a link, I don't know, maybe Adria could share that, where if you want to talk, I don't have to cancel you. If you need somebody to talk to, I could probably schedule you. You can schedule yourself in my calendar and I just listen to you. And if you actually need me to comment or give you counsel on what to do, I'm happy to do that or give recommendations as well. So I don't have the link and in, but we can put it in the comment section if you want to schedule a time going forward. And please don't lose your humanity. Don't dehumanize people. Don't be part of anything, any thought, any ideology, anything that makes anybody feel less than. Let people be 100% human.
Thank you so much, David, for that. David said so many things in so little time that I was just struggling to write it all down. But so much insight. And I just loved how he gave context for the different types of depression. And they mentioned how it's okay to have emotions. Because I feel like maybe a lot of people have heard this, but one thing I know I've heard a lot is that when I'm going through something and I speak and I'm like, this thing is stressing me, this thing is giving me anxiety. And then somebody else is like, well, Miss XYZ, or that person your age did this and they didn't have anxiety, so what's wrong with you? And it's like, I just don't even know how to start. And the fact that he said that some people, there's like a clinical side to depression where it's your hormones, and then there's situational depression where something happens and it's actually causing you to feel certain ways. And it's okay. And it's okay to, you know, to feel difficult emotions, to feel bad emotions in quotes. That was just so helpful for me personally. For context, I go through a lot at school, so that was amazing. That was amazing, David. Thank you so much.